Hello everyone. From now, we start our next plenary session. I'll be...
Is this okay?
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to try and tie together two themes of this conference. One is what is happening in the global south, and the other is what is happening in the global north. And I want to argue that we need to understand these both in order to understand what I would define as a crisis of, not a crisis, the end of liberal democracy. Now when I talk about this, people say things like, well, we never had liberal democracy anyway. There was a phrase that was used, I think, by Harold Macmillan during the height of the sort of boom in Britain, when he turned around to everybody and cornucopia of consumer wealth and said, "You've never had it so good." What I'm going to say is, you've never had it so bad. So that's what I mean by the end of liberal democracy. You might think it was bad before, it's a damn sight worse now. And let's look at what's going on. You have the rise of forces like Donald Trump. That is taken by everybody as a sign of some kind of aberration. We'll go back to some kind of liberal normal, and it's just the stupids who don't understand voting for Trump. No. It's part of a systematic pattern. This pattern began in 2014, when for the first time since Hitler, the Western powers supported the placing in power of a government with a presence from an openly fascist organization. The right bloc of Andrew Parubi, who was invited to Canada by the Liberal Party and was feted by the NDP as a patriot. Andrew Parubi's stated beliefs are, first of all, there is a necessary separation of races between white and even, Ukrainian and Russian and Jewish. He's an anti-Semite. People worry about Jeremy Corbyn. You should see what he has to say. And the white Slavic race is superior and has the right to assert its sovereignty by means of violence. That is fascism. That's not far right, that's not patriotism, that is fascism. Wake up and smell the Zyklon, as we used to say, okay? This guy is celebrated by Western Democrats, including even our own socialist party. This is a change. It's something new. It's not an accident. Regime change has now become the new norm. It used to be something every now and again you dashed in, overthrew a government, had a coup and went away. Now it's a systematic policy to overthrow the governments that stand up against you. War in Latin America is now being contemplated to start a phase of history. If we heard Maria talk yesterday about what the consequences be for the people of Venezuela. But let me add something to that. What Pence and Pompeo were trying to do was to get Colombia and Brazil to go to war against Venezuela. That is to set the nations of Latin America fighting like the nations of the Middle East. Latin America has not been a war zone since 1870. That's a new initiative. Economic sanctions, the collective punishment of entire populations attempting to starve the people of Iran and the people of Venezuela to death in order to get them to accept the government that you want. That's new. It was condemned in 1948 under the Geneva Convention. Collective punishment is a war crime. And as I've mentioned in my previous speak, every Canadian citizen who attempts to thwart sanctions on Venezuela is committing a crime. It's a crime under the Economic Special Measures Act. The Economic Special Measures Act has never been submitted for the approval of Parliament. It wasn't even made public what the grounds were for the sanctions against Venezuela. We've been trying to get freedom of information requests for the government simply to tell us what is the evidence for these sanctions. This is a new stage. This is a new stage. This is not the continuation of the same old, same old. And I think there are two factors. One is undoubtedly, and this is what a lot of our discussion has been about, the rise of China, the unification of the fragmented South through initiatives such as the Eurasian Unification, the Shanghai Accord, the Belt and Road Initiative, the Asian Development Bank. There's been ample discussion at this conference about those measures. And that is very much to be welcomed. But I do not think the North is simply reacting to a threat. The North is going through a crisis of its own. And that's what produced this problem. What I've just shown in the last session, and you can go and see the slides in the papers, is that contrary to what many people believe, the northern countries never recovered from the slump of 1974. If you look at the post-war area, it breaks into two periods, in one of which the average growth rate declines from about 8% to about 5%. And after 1974, it dips down, it comes up again, but it doesn't come up to where it was before. And then it's declined from 5% to where it is now, 1%. That is almost the ecological ideal of zero growth. There's almost no growth at all in the North. And it's universal, it's not just the United States. You can look at every single northern country, including the countries of the Asian miracle. South Korea's growth rate is now 1.2%. 1.2%. That's lower than America. Where is the Asian miracle? Every imperialist country in the world is now going through a crisis which is converting them into agencies for creating new investment, into agencies for creating financial instruments. Exactly what Keynes warned against and what Marx warned against is now happening. That the circuit of reproduction is interrupted at the point where people have money in their hands. And what they're doing now is they're accumulating that money, they're using it, thanks to the financial classes which dominate the world system, to accumulate means of enriching themselves by growth in real estate, by growth in mining income, everything that gets money out of other people's hands, but nothing to do with creating welfare for people. And this is a terminal crisis. It's a terminal crisis. I don't want to get too apocalyptic. The word I use for it is the long slump. We used to talk about the long boom. Let's say we are now in a long slump. It's not just a Great Depression. People like Sheikh and ourselves have talked about a great second-day depression. Actually, we're living through a long slump. And then in this situation, the South's real growth is overtaking that of the North. It's overtaking both because it is rising and that of the North is falling. But why is it that that is not reflected in a growth in the living standards of the South? Well, Pat Knight described this very clearly, because the goods that could be made available to the people of the South are denied them because of monetary inflation. So that the terms of trade constantly change, so all the gains of the productivity improvements of the South go into the hands of the bankers of the North. That's what's actually happening. This is a politically, utterly unstable system. It cannot go on. So what we're talking about, and Maria's talk about Venezuela spelled this out very clearly, is exactly what Rosa Luxemburg so correctly so long ago says. The choice is socialism or barbarism.